Danny Dumaresque, good morning.
Good morning, Randy. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine, thank you. Yes, I wanted to call this morning to follow up on what I have been able to decipher after drilling into this issue of the lack of a transmission line from Bay to Spear into the Avalon.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, one of the things that I've now been able to conclude is that the Nalcor cooked the books in favor of Muskrat Falls when it compared the cost of being able to keep the Holyrood isolated option versus Muskrat Falls. And I've been able to determine this because I believe, quite sincerely, and I believe the facts back it up, that Nalcor and the government, similar to what they did in 2011, they plugged in a figure so they could have a surplus going into the last election. They did the same thing when they prepared the case for Muskrat Falls versus the other option. And they knowingly did this because what they did is they took the current cost and usage of oil at Holyrood, and then they projected totally unrealistic price increases to show that Muskrat Falls would be the cheaper option. And let me give you a couple of facts. In 2011, we burnt $135 million worth of oil at Holyrood.
$1 million worth?
$135 million.
Okay.
Now, their own documents confirm that they have had to use Holyrood much earlier in the fall, much later in the spring, at the same time because we had power, electricity, green power, in central Newfoundland. They could not get in there. We couldn't do the small hydros because they had no line to put it on. So the bottom line is that we were burning, in my estimation, anywhere from $40 to $50 million more in the last several years going out to stacks of Holyrood than we should have been burning if they had done the proper thing and put the third line in from Bay to Spear. But when they went and prepared the figures to tell us what we would be costing us if we kept Holyrood and built the system up on the island, they used those figures as current cost, not as the real cost if they had done their job properly. And if you look at it and take $50 million annually over 50 years, all of a sudden you got $2.5 billion.
Danny, the only thing that I am challenged with, I have no dispute with some of the things you're saying, and I've reviewed a couple of documents since we talked and since Nalcor issued its release in opinion, where once the opinion was that in actual fact we didn't have enough transmission capacity to take advantage of the electricity of the green energy we were generating elsewhere. There appears to have been a change of opinion on that. I would accept what you're saying. The tunnel vision piece that you speak of, vis-a-vis Muskrat Falls, the desire to do Muskrat no matter what, the blind adherence to a set of numbers, which is what you're claiming, to justify going ahead with Muskrat Falls, when in actual fact you say there were those who must have known these numbers were off the wall and would not work. I have difficulty swallowing that piece of your argument because there's no upside in it. I don't know for what reason any politician or any government bureaucrat, without some significant benefit to them personally, you know what I mean? There's money in their own pocket or something, and we don't see that in this story. There's no upside to doing it. And so I don't know, well, if what you're saying is right, then what was their motivation? And I guess that's going right back to cause one. Why would any of these people, or they're good, competent people in my world that I understand, why would they want to produce a set of numbers and then die on that hill over those numbers if they actually knew at the outset these numbers are as fake as all get out?
See, Randy, I will go to my grave believing that this project called Muskrat Falls was a political project. It was a political decision by one Danny Williams. The premier of this province, succeeding him, gave direct orders of the same nature to these great officials. And I've been in government before, and certainly all of these officials, when they are given a decision of the cabinet, and when the premier of the province says this is our position, then I am telling you that certainly whatever it takes to be able to sell that project was told to these people to go and do it. And I believe that that is what has been done. And I'm not saying that it was all covert and all intentional, but I'm telling you that these numbers speak louder than words, and I really believe sincerely that a lot of these costs, and this is not the first time that this type of thing was done. And I mean, we have had the Enrons of the world. We know what's happened. Well, I know when I was on the board of directors of Hydro what it meant in my fiduciary duty. And I believe that more directors out there should acknowledge and be prepared to accept that they have a greater responsibility now than they ever had.
Man, you know, I'm going to ask you one. I know where you're coming from, and it's going to require some further exploration and thought, obviously, but on the issue of the transmission bond. Danny, I had a caller on right at the top of the program this morning. We're talking about the fact that we are now facing a massive deficit, and the deficit challenge does nothing in the next 12 months but increase. It gets harder, and then after that, it gets harder again. In fact, they're talking a $4 billion loss in reality. Right. Over the next 3 years, and now that's an operating reality. That's a cash flow reality.
Exactly.
This gentleman this morning said the reason why we're in this circumstance, he lays it wholly and solely at the altar of Muskrat Falls. I am challenged by that. I can't accept that argument, not at this stage of the game. Anyway, we can say they overspent if we want, but we really can't blame it on Muskrat, right? I don't know. Would you agree with this guy?
What I would say, Randy, and I'll give you the figures. We are going to have to come up with $2.5 to $3 billion cash in the next 2 to 3 years, which is what this deficit has been talked about. We are going to have to take $2 to $3 billion as equity cash from general revenue, like we just turned over $650 million in the last budget. We're going to have to take that now and put it over to Nalcor to satisfy the equity so that we can go and get some money on the spot market to build the project. In terms of a direct hit from Muskrat Falls, that is the figure that we're talking about.
But isn't that a figure that's down the road?
No, it's not down the road. In the next 3 years, we're going to have to put up that kind of money, because if we don't have that money parked over in Nalcor and basically being spent now, but we've got to have it over there parked in Nalcor so that when they go to the banker on Wall Street or in Beijing, they got to be able to show this is what the cash we have, this is what equity we got to have. So it's got to be there.
But to me, again, looking at the figures, I look at it and I don't have all of them in front of me, granted, but no, but we're still looking at an economic engine, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador, that is earning or at least attracting, they're collecting revenues that are up in the $8 billion mark.
Yes.
Okay, so this deficit is based on our operating or cash flow reality, is it not?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
So whether or not we spent $600 million, I guess the question is that I posed to this man this morning, if there were no Muskrat, if this wasn't in the picture for us today, Muskrat, would we be in the financial circumstance we're in? And the answer consistently comes back to me as yes, we would.
Absolutely not. For example...
Well, I guess that's where I'm coming from.
Not totally, but for example, if we did not have to part with our $2 billion to go towards equity in Muskrat in the next couple of years, we would be able to take that $2 billion, and we would be able to cover the current account deficit of $700 million for this year and up to $1.3 billion in the following year.
Yeah, but then it's gone. But then your bank account's gone.
Oh, yeah.
What I'm saying is you're still at that point in time spending more than you're earning.
Oh, yes, and there's no question that in addition to the terrible gamble, and this is with no overruns in Muskrat Falls, which I certainly believe is not needed either, but in addition to that, this government has gone out and built empires for the sake of building empires. They've had it unbelievably extra staff. Department of Fisheries over there has gone up about 300% in the last 8 or 10 years, but there's no extra incentive to fishermen or processors. You can look across every budget and every department, you can see where empires have been built, and there's been expenses
I got a feeling. I got to end on that note, but if empires have been built, Danny Dumaresque, I think based on what we're hearing from the Minister of Finance, empires are about to crumble. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few months. Thanks for this.
Well, the ship of state is run by a government that has lost complete control of the finances of this province at a time when we should never have been in this position.
You have a good one.
You too.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. What do you think, folks?